welcome to this series of videos on learning IT, learning how to program, learning how to do IT infrastructure. My name is Homero Rivera. I've been working in IT for quite a few years now. And this first chapter, we're going to talk about the case for process automation. Although the goal of this channel is to offer IT lessons, offer how to program courses and all of that, if we don't have an objective, if we don't have an ultimate goal, it's hard to retain the knowledge. You see, programming is a very abstract thing that if you don't do it with a goal in mind, with a purpose in mind, it doesn't work. It's very hardly be a good learning experience. So we could be talking about fancy programs, we could be talking about creating operating systems, we could be talking about creating applications, visual applications, video games, and all of that. But in a lot of cases, there's a lot of people trying to go into IT as a change of career, as a trying to get a change of environment, trying to learn something new, to strive. So probably the best way is to work ourselves from the place we are. So probably right now we could be working in the office and we could have a lot of processes that, believe it or not, could be automated. You can automate those processes, and a process that takes 5 hours, 10 hours, 2 days, you can do it in minutes. You can do it in seconds. Okay, so that's what we're going to start talking about. We're going to start talking about automating information processes that are executed day to day in the office. So to do that, our agenda today is we're going to have a look into automation for different kinds of processes, producing goods or producing information. We're going to talk about how to go automatic. To automate a process, go by stages. So although I say that we can automate process, that doesn't mean that it'll be easy to do it from end to end. So probably you're going to have to automate a part of the process, then another one, and then with some extra work, link those parts in order to have a full automated process. We're going to learn how to start from where we are and work our way up in the IT ladder. Again, our objective is to be IT professionals, IT versed, or at least IT conversant, because you may have the objective of simply administering, working with teams, but maybe not engage in actual programming. So that's part of the plan too. And we're going to go over a case scenario where we're going to assess the risk and opportunities for in a non-automated process and how that could become an automated one. So let's get started. So when we talk about automation, what comes to mind? Probably we think about car assembly lines with robotic cranes or arms like doing stuff over a conveyor with a chassis. We can think about bakeries and with some kind of device just pouring dough into some mold, things like that. Bottling companies, we can think about a series of bottles going through a machine and being filled, and then a cap is placed on top of the bottle, things like that. Textiles, maybe, putting all those threads, weaving those threads and coming up with a large piece of fabric or something like that. Maybe warehousing, maybe pallets, maybe forklifts. They could be automated. Again, conveyors come to mind. Elevators probably too. It's easy to imagine when physical things are involved. How about information? Well, we're saying that there are processes that we do in the office, that we do at school. Maybe I'm a teacher, maybe I have to write down, the scores and all of that. We have to fill out forms, we have to enter information into a system. All of that is production as well. It is information production, but it's not often thought about a process that could be automated. Truth is that computers were conceived at first just to calculate data. That's all they could do. That was the only objective in the beginning. Then somebody came up with ideas like, okay, let's have a graphical user interface and let's make it pretty. Let's use mouses, and then we can put video games there, or we can do video editing on the computer. So it's like, yeah, but in the beginning, what we used to do was payroll. We used to do reports, aggregations of data. Maybe we would program something to do some forecasting because I work in the supermarket business and I need to be staffed, very well staffed in the registers on Saturdays, Sundays, and some other days of the week and stuff like that. And I may also have to do data curation. Well, it turns out that many of these processes happen in the office as well, in our jobs, at schools, at different organizations, where manually somebody has to take some piece of information, some large amount of data, and calculate payroll or create these reports by hand. And nobody thinks about that like being automated processes, but they can be automated if your end result pretty much is predictable. If your source of data is predictable, it has a shape, it has a format, and your end result, whatever you need to render, has a defined format most of the time, or a predictable format, if not the same all the time, at least predictable, then it's possible to automate it. And it's possible to get out of this merry-go-round of spending 5, 10 hours, a couple days a week, just doing data and things like that. The truth is that whenever you plan to automate a process, you're going to go through three different stages, and this is very normal. Most of processes out there, they're defined. You have a series of steps, but they're all manual, right? So you have a process that goes from start to end, and you have a bunch of steps in between. Those steps are defined, but you go very manual in them. Normally what happens is that you can automate some of those tasks that go in between the start and the end, the beginning and the end of a process. So that would be like going semi-automatic. When going fully automatic, it would be like you don't have to get involved in the in-betweens at all. But typically, when you go to a fully automatic mode, whenever you are able to fully automate a process, you still have to do the feeding to the process. The process will still need some input, and in the end, there's going to be some output, some cleanup, something that you have to do. Also, you may want to supervise the process in case something goes wrong. So going automated doesn't mean that you're going to go out of work. It's very difficult to have a fully automatic process that will work 100% of the time and that can feed itself. So there's still going to be work, but you're going to be able to do more quality work and even more automation, and you're going to be able to do a lot more. So let's go to an example. So if I have a process in the office and I want to go fully automatic on it, we'll have to go semi-automatic, of course. How does that look like? It's hard to tell from information processes, so I would rather talk about real world example. Let's have a look. Okay, so for a real world example, we're going to talk about McDonald's. Yeah, why not? Everybody knows McDonald's. Most people like McDonald's, some people don't. But it's an example that most people can think about, and we can extrapolate this into automating information processes. So when McDonald's started, they only offer like a couple of burgers with cheese, without cheese. And what they did is they had something called a speedy service system created by the McDonald's brothers. And there was a specialist in the griddle, some guy who really knew how to cook those patties, the fryer, somebody really know how to make them crisp and golden. And there was a specialist in assembling the burgers and wrapping them very quickly. And so you had a process from start to finish where there were a series of steps. Now, I'm not saying that every process is like that. Not every process has a series of steps. Some only need like one single step and are very simple. But automating is more and more difficult as you have more and more steps. So that's why this is probably a good example. So somebody goes to the griddle, somebody, puts the buns, assembles the burger, wraps them. So everything's manual, but there's need for labor that's specialized in one type of task, and you have a limited amount of products that you can deliver. They only had a couple of burgers. What happened in the years after, decades after, is that they started automating parts of the process, such as, for example, cooking the patties. Now you didn't need to have a griddle master. The patty was created in a way that it would perfectly fit. It was perfectly calibrated to go into an automated griddle that had like a press, or has like a press still nowadays. What you do is that you have a patty with the right amount of fat, the right amount of meat, that it's frozen at some specific temperature. Now you put these patties on this automatic griddle, you put down the press, push a button, wait for the green light, you lift the press, and the patties are perfectly cooked. But that's because there is a calibration in between the two. So what happens? You save time and you automate the process of cooking the patties. The same happened for the buns. For example, the buns are perfectly calibrated from the bakery, from the factory, to go into a specialized toaster where they would be toasted just right. And if you think about it, every McDonald's burger, the bun is perfectly toasted all of the time. That's because it is calibrated. So you had a control input, a control process, and then a perfect output, right? So, and if you think about it, automating these steps of the process allows more time to have more products. You know, the total items in the menu of McDonald's grew over the years, and it was because you didn't need to understand perfectly how to cook a patty. So processes get automated in the middle, and there's still a manual process. You still got to assemble the burger, you still got to pack it. Eventually, they came up with these registers, touchscreen registers, and years after, just about a year ago, a couple years ago, they announced the first fully automated McDonald's in Fort Worth, Texas. Some say that the first truly fully automated McDonald's was in Phoenix, but okay, the press just announced this not long ago. It's just like that. You pick up your order, you get whatever item you want, and nobody is in the kitchen. Now, is this good or wrong? Well, depends on how you see it. If we think about being able to do more quality work with our time, that's probably a good thing. But you still need to feed the system. Even if you have a fully automated McDonald's, you still gotta feed it. You still gotta give it buns, patties, cheese, mayo, ketchup, whatever, so that it can do its job. And you probably still need to clean up after. You still need to clean up after the process and supervise that, all kinds of work gets done. And that's how it is, and that's how we want to go. So essentially the lesson here is that if you have an information process in the office where you have a series of steps, the thing you want to do is you're probably going to go from this manual series of steps into automating some links in between, and then until you finally are able to put them all together in a fully automated process that you only need to supervise, feed, or clean up after. Okay, and this comes with another advantage, that you can work in a greater variety of things depending on how you automate this, like McDonald's did, where they increase their menu, they increase the options in the menu. Or it has the added advantage that if you have a fully automated process, it's easier to replicate it into other branches. So let's say you work for an organization that has, I don't know, has a location here, and they're gonna open a location there. Okay, so if you have that fully automated process through computer programs or whatever, then it's easier to replicate it than trying to replicate a process that is fully manual with a bunch of steps. That will require a lot of training, require a lot of time. So let's use this example to extrapolate and see about automating our office processes. So let's say that you have an information process and that you want to automate it, and you're considering different options. Let me cut you some slack. I've been working on this for quite a few years, and there are many scenarios that I found over time in different companies, different organizations, who are trying to find a solution to their information processes needs. Some of them involve using a vendor, some of them involve going automatic, like programming a solution, tailor solution, perfectly catered to what they want. So some common scenarios found in information processes. When you're number one, when you're almost totally manual, you may choose to say, well, I just want to keep going manual, maybe paperful, or you may have a lot of spreadsheets and things like that, or the process is manually executed using simple tools. Typically what you're going to find in this scenario is that you constantly have people sending you information, and sometimes this information has defects. So you're supposed to get one, two, three, four spreadsheets from different people in the organization. You get them, you see that there are errors, you see that there's a problem with the format in Excel, you see that they overlooked some errors in the spreadsheet, you have this hash error values in some of the cells, and you have to give it back. You have a deadline, and since the deadline is inflexible, you do overtime, and that's what typically happens when you're in a very manual process. You may choose to use a vendor out of the box solution. Well, this is typically it's okay, but what you do is that you subordinate the process to what the vendor offers in their software or in their solution. So let's say that you have a process such as HR recruitment and onboarding, and you want this process to be rich. You want people to receive some swag by the first week of their employment where they feel welcome, and the vendor tool doesn't support that. Doesn't support sending a message to somebody in the company saying it's time to send some package to the new employee. You subordinate your process to whatever the vendor is willing to give you, and you may end up still doing manual things because you manually monitor who turned a week old in the company so that you can perform this action. So that's typically what happens when you have a vendor. You also have to pay for licenses, and whenever you use a vendor software, you need somebody trained for the software, someone to really know it. And that's okay. Sometimes that works. What I'm saying is you may run into some kind of issues. Then we have a vendor solution with adjustments. So vendor solutions, you still use a third-party software solution, and they're willing to tailor some aspects of that tool. And what typically happens when you do that is that you run into delays and you run into cost. Okay, so that's one of the things to be careful with. How much does this cost? And does the vendor have an engineer ready to make the adjustments that I need? Does the engineer really understand what is it that I need? Because that also happens. You get a lot of rework because you have someone who's hardworking and everything, but they may not get every single point of what is it that you need from this tool, and rework is needed. Did I already mention that sometimes they don't have somebody ready to work and you gotta wait in line for months until they have? Okay, number four, having a solution tailored to our specific needs, but that's partial, and you want to work along with some third party adjusted solutions. Okay, this runs into complexity, right? Because you work with a tool, then you work with another tool, then you work with someone. So there's a chain of events that need to perfectly coordinate. This can only work well whenever you have some kind of dictator manager who is the owner of the process and knows it very well and keeps it safe, right? So whenever you don't have someone working, and I mean well when saying that you need a real tyrant like supervising this process, it can work. But if you don't have someone who really looks after each part of the process, knows it very well, and coordinates it, you end up having problems. You end up having problems with coordination, and you end up with a process that creates more problems than it solves. And finally, number five, having a full end-to-end solution tailored to our needs. When we have a full end-to-end solution tailored to our needs, that normally means that we have a developer team. We have software developers who create solutions for us, and it may seem like, or we have a data engineering department, and it may seem like, okay, this is going to be ideal. It's not always ideal, and let me tell you why. Because sometimes we don't have sponsorship from the company, and you end up with a team of firefighters instead of developers. Okay, so these are common scenarios found in information processes that you should be aware of before you decide to go into automation, because you're going to have that problem. You're going to have a lack of sponsorship. They're going to say, we're going to go use vendor tools, and these are things that may happen. Okay, so let's assume we have sponsorship. They say, okay, let's start automating this thing. So when information processes involve numerous steps, automation becomes more difficult. There's a level of complexity there, right? So the right thing to do would be to divide and conquer and probably start semi-automatic. Remember these links where you have processes that are automatic and then processes that are manual or something like that. Just to start with that, but don't lose focus on the big picture, which is having a fully automated process. So in order to divide and conquer, you can use one of many analysis tools such as the Pareto principle. You may think, okay, so we have this process, we have a lot of problems coming out of this process. 80% of those problems can be attributed to these causes. Okay, so you work in automating that and perfecting that. You can use a SWOT analysis, which helps you basically do the same as the Pareto principle, and you can come up with a more rich conclusions. Or you can use a cause and effect diagram. If the process is really all over the place, the cause and effect diagram is probably the place to start. And this is the example that I want to use today. So we're gonna assume that we work in a contact center with, I don't know, 10 different lines of businesses under 10 different managers, or give it an n number of managers, all of whom provide information, supply information to the payroll specialist, so that the payroll specialist puts together all the data he gets in spreadsheets and has to come up with a payroll. So how do we automate that? How do we work out an automated solution for such a complex process? So using the Ishikawa diagram, cause and effect diagram, we're going to have some categories here. Typical categories used are equipment, process, people, materials, environment management, like the picture here indicates. But we're going to go with a different set of categories, which are the 5 M's of manufacturing, which are man and mind power, machine, material, method, and measurement. I'm not going to explain each one of these. I'm just going to go ahead and start working the example and see how we can automate that process. All right, so here we are. I decided to save some time and just draw the fishbone diagram before getting started. So we have our desired outcome, which is payroll, and we want a quality payroll, right? And here are the categories, which are mind power, just gonna draw a line there, material. I know that we're talking about an information process, but we can label spreadsheets like materials. We can label our laptop like machine. Of course, it is a machine. Measurement, that's going to be a little more broad. Okay, so let's get started with a yellow. So we have the payroll process. What is the measurement that the payroll process is right or wrong? Well, in our case scenario, we're talking about a call center, contact center with several lines of businesses, where each manager of each line of business sends a spreadsheet with data to our specialist. So a good outcome of the payroll is whether it was on time or not, right? So that's a poor measure, but it's good for a start. So we can talk about timeliness, whether we finish on time or not. That's our measure. We can also have claims. So let's say that we submitted the payments and something went wrong, and we have claims from employees saying, hey, you did something wrong. Because in this call center, we have productivity bonuses. We have the actual salary being paid minus any absences or anything like that, and the productivity bonus, which can range, I don't know, depends on the line of business. It could be 40% of the salary, 50% of the salary, 80% of the salary, 200%, 100% of the salary. So you earn double depending on that. That's what you typically find in sales scenarios or something like that. So call centers, you can have a sales queue with people actually selling, customer service, collections, things like that. Okay, so we have so many lines of businesses. So we have claims from employees and timeliness. I think that claim is a very poor measurement. If we need to have a claim to tell that something went wrong, we're doing something wrong. We have a process that is intrinsically wrong, and we can extend our measurement because payroll is highly correlated to employee satisfaction. So we have a lot of rotation, probably rotation could act as a measurement. Not that payroll causes all of rotation, but could be a factor. And if it's discovered to be the driving factor, then we should definitely put that in. So I think that this is enough. If you don't have a system to tell, hey, everything is all right, and you have to rely on the timeliness factor, whether or not the payroll was finished on time as needed, whether there are claims from employees or there's rotation based on payroll, that's a way to measure it, right? So mind power, we're talking about a process that requires people to happen. We have a payroll specialist. Let's say there's two people there. in the accounting department, but they receive from 10 people. Let's assume there were 10 lines of business. 10 is just a number. You can say 50, doesn't matter. Managers in the actual operations where you have a line of business with 50 employees and they say how much gets paid because they have access to the measures. For machines, we have laptops, computers, PCs. That's what the two people in accounting have. Slash computers. Boom. This tool is common to uh, managers and specialists alike, but we may also have some other systems. Now, in call centers, it's very normal to have software which routes the calls. So people call 800 numbers and they're going to be routed into a queue of people waiting for those calls. So let's call it simply contact center CC software. Like I think there's some Cisco solutions, there's Avaya solutions, and there's a nice system solutions and things like that. So we can talk about contact center software there. And the contact center software has many displays. They have a graphical user interface where you can check what was the actual number of hours that people were there. You can check if somebody missed. You can check what their schedule was supposed to be, whether they were adherent to the schedule or not. And you can do so through the graphical user interface. But also this software may also have reports, typically CSVs. Let me start with another color. CSV files. Okay, they may have TXT files with formatted text, which is not like super exploitable because it's separated by spaces and you probably got to do a lot of work there. But the information is there. Now, it's noteworthy that a lot of these softwares also come by default packed with a database, or you need to have a database server with data. So sometimes there is a database. So this is important to find out. If you have a piece of software for productivity, it probably has a database as a underlying data storage, and you may not know this, and you may be able to exploit that data through programming. But also, if you have CSVs that come out of the software, you can also leverage that. In our example, we have managers who are actually relying on the GUI and the reports as such CSVs in order to send information to our mind power on the accountant side, the two people there. Materials, actual materials, well, this could be the materials. These are spreadsheets most of the time. We have spreadsheets. It can be Microsoft Excel, it can be OpenCalc, whatever you define as a spreadsheet. Google's spreadsheet online is a good example too. So they have these materials and they send it to the people in accounting. So we're already identifying here by just doing this analysis that because they use a software, probably you can access the information in a more direct manner than having a middleman, 10 managers who create spreadsheets and send to the people in accounting, and they may send it with errors and all of that. So there is a bottleneck being identified here just by using the fishbone diagram, the cause and effect diagram. So spreadsheets, and the spreadsheets that you use are, let's say, they give you connection time because you pay for connection time in this business for the call center agents being connected to the phone expecting calls. So connection time. So you have that kind of spreadsheet. You have the spreadsheet of the productivity bonus, the bonus spreadsheet, and there may be different aspects that are being paid. So you may have, for example, in sales, that defines your bonus. Collections, how much you collect, that defines your bonus. You're in customer service, maybe your call handle time, average call handle time could be your could be your measure for a bonus or something like that. So you have the bonus spreadsheet, you have the connection time spreadsheet, and what else could you have? Well, you need to, because you need to send this to a bank, the method, let's put that in the method. Send payment info to the bank, so they actually make the payments. You have to derive from all of this, you have to derive the payment info and send it to the bank. And because you have to send it to the bank, you need the information of the employees. You know, there's a lot of rotation in the call center business, let me tell you, in case you wonder. So you probably need the HR list of employees, right? So you have two different entities. So now you have probably one or two, let's say one person from HR to send you this list, right? So there's another dynamics. So our person in HR sends you the HR list with the updated employee information and data. Okay, and then you get from the 10 people, the managers, you get connection time, you get bonuses and spreadsheets. Okay, they also get it from another system, which is a call center software. So we have a bottleneck. We've identified that, and we have a send payment information to the bank. So the method is obtain HR employee list, obtain connection and bonus spreadsheets. Now, if you have any problems with these items, that's another bottleneck. So let's say you give me the HR employee list and then you send me another one. Hey, I forgot about these two new people. Well, that's a problem because you're going to have to start your work again, or maybe you're going to have to correct your work. Then if you obtain the connection time and bonuses from the managers, and these also have errors, you're going to have more overtime and more problems. And eventually, you got to get your release right and put all this together and create the information to send payment to the bank. So we've identified that in this method there are a lot of risks. There's actual information that you can exploit better because this software typically has that. Maybe the person in HR is also relying in another piece of software, right? So you can call it the HR software or platform, which is also power of this. And it probably has a database also that you can exploit, or you can obtain the information directly in CSVs or TXT. So this also has some data assets to exploit. So having two people in accounting who expect spreadsheets from several managers and they expect an HR list, this information needs to be right, and then send the information to the bank in time for the payroll to happen. We've seen there are bottlenecks. We've seen that there's a lot of potential problems. Let's see how this could look like from an automation perspective. Okay, so let's go there. Okay, so here we have our diagram. I know it's probably not very readable, but it just serves us as a reminder of the analysis that we did. So one of the first things we needed to do in order to automate is question, why do I get this from the managers? Why do I get these files from the managers, 10 different files, 20 different files, one with the bonuses, one with the connection data? Well, it turns out that the connection data has to be curated. Turns out that the call center software gives you the data in integers 1 2 3 4 5 6 seconds, and they need to transform it into actual Excel time, which is drastically different. Okay, so you have that possible reason. So there's data curation concerns. Okay, data curation. Let's assume that was the case. Maybe something different. If the manager didn't do this and you could get the txt file directly, you can do the data curation very easily, in a single click if you program it with Visual Basic for applications using Microsoft Excel or using OpenCalc, OpenOffice Calc, or something like that. If that was the reason. If the reason was because probably there's going to be some formatting done, like the names here come with first name or last name, comma, first name, or something like that, then transformation, that is within data curation, that can be automated using Visual Basic for applications. Likewise, you could be able to just do some Excel trickery and do the curation all on your own. But even the Excel trickery could be automated using macros or Visual Basic for applications. And we can learn how to do that. And that's actually what's going to be on chapter 2. If the reason is, whatever the reason is. Number 2, we should question, hey, is it because they put together the TXT information? Well, the TXT information, if we had a text file, which is not exactly data, it's not tabular, but it has patterns or something like that, the same. With Visual Basic for applications, if we understand the patterns, we can do that curation. Or we can even delve into Visual Basic Script, which is pretty much Visual Basic for application, but it's outside of it. It was typically used for web browsers, but you can use it standalone on your desktop, doesn't matter, and so on. Python is really easy, and that's one of the other things that we're going to look. But this is a little more advanced. We're just going to work with Visual Basic for applications. It's because they need to do formulas. Okay, formulas, special ones. No doubt you can do that with Visual Basic for applications. Okay, then you need to join data. You need to join the 10 different files. So here you got to identify. Maybe I can tell them, give me access. I'll retrieve those text files. But you could take a step further. And let's do this. And you can retrieve the data. If you can connect to the database, even with Visual Basic for applications or Python, you can connect to the database, query the data, and you can do query DB to paste to spreadsheet. Now, if you code all of this and you press a button that triggers all these that you're going to do, and then automatically you can get your information. So it's that easy, and it could take seconds. Okay, the HR software, if we get that information from an HR software, we should check with the vendor if that information is available, if we can receive it somehow. So what you could do is either go berserk on this and really program everything, or you can still download the materials and do some partial programming with Visual Basic for applications. I'm going to show you how to do that next chapter. The consolidation is something that you can also do with Visual Basic for applications. Well, it seems like I don't need to do a list. We can just use Visual Basic for applications and macros. But we need all the materials set. So you got to make a decision as to, are you going to have 10 spreadsheets or 20 with the bonuses? From this standpoint, it looks like only the bonuses information is probably something that you need to wait for the managers to have. So seems like you can cut the middleman because you have platform software, a call center software, and an HR application, and you can either retrieve those files manually, go to the graphical user interface, press a button, get the report, and put that in a folder in your computer, or maybe there's an opportunity to get all 10 in a single spreadsheet because all you care is about connection information, or you can connect directly to the database. It depends on the vendor. So that's one of the problems of working with vendors. Sometimes they don't enable you to retrieve the data directly so that you can exploit it. And that's a bad thing. So whenever you're choosing a vendor, the best would be is, will I have access to the database? Will I be able to query this data directly so that I can program this process? That would be an interesting question to ask your vendors. So what I see here is you can download the 10 files yourself, paste them in Excel, and run your macros, and that will do all the data curation you need, right? You can also apply formulas if there were any formulas. You can create them. I don't know. I'm gonna go. This is highly speculative, but let's say that the manager, you have different locations, and they got to calculate some form of tax that applies in a state or something like that. That's when you would like a special formula for identification. That's a highly speculative, very hypothetical scenario. So yeah, I mean either you download your 10 CSVs or TXTs, and then you run a macro, Visual Basic script, and you consolidate that into a single spreadsheet that you're going to send to the bank, right? Or you can connect directly to the database, query the data, and put it in the spreadsheet, which is kind of an advanced topic, but we're going to look into those kinds of examples in this channel. So how long do you think it will take for a Visual Basic for applications or script to download this data and do all curation and have your file ready? Except for the bonus information, it seems like the bonus information comes from other sources, and it still needs to be manual. But let's say that you could do the connection information, the HR information, query the database directly, paste into a spreadsheet, and then do the data curation. How long do you think that could take if you program that and you press the button? It could take a minute. If you need to run 10 queries and paste the information, all of that, and you have some network latency or something like that, it could take like a minute. So programming processes in the office is real. I'm telling you, you can have this. Let me put it into red. Except for the bonus information, the rest of the work, if you automate it properly, you can have this in 1 minute. The work of an afternoon, the work of a day or a couple of days, you can resolve the bottlenecks. Say the managers, you be dedicated to your managing. Don't send me payment information or anything like that. You can have this in 1 minute, and that's what we're going to learn in this channel. All right, let's go to our conclusions. All right, so what are the conclusions after today's chapter? So the total process time of a long information process can be reduced to a minute when using programming tools such as Visual Basic for applications, Visual Basic Script, Python, and SQL. Visual Basic for applications, Visual Basic Script is something that we're going to go into on the next chapter. It's going to serve as a foundation because we're gonna go into principles. Python is more advanced. Structured query language is a little more advanced. We're definitely going to delve into those, but it's going to be till later. When we hear the word programming, some people think about fancy things like the new versions of Android, iOS, or Windows. They think about video games. They think about a big software, big graphical software, things like that. Not necessarily. We're gonna go there, but baby steps first. Truth is that programming is possible and even desirable for all tasks, especially information processes like those found in the office. And that automation is closely tied to programming. They're nearly synonyms. This whole thing about data programming, well, that was the first purpose, right? So we're working with data. That was the first purpose computers were built for, to process data. Let's do computations. Okay, let's automate computations. Okay, your computer may have the capacity and tools necessary to automate some tasks already, especially when it comes to information processes. So if you have Excel, if you have OpenOffice Calc, then that comes equipped with Visual Basic for applications. You can record macros and you can program them and you can get started. Python is for free. Some databases are for free, but let's not go there yet. Baby steps first. And even if your computer didn't have the tools that you want, most tools are for free. A lot of programming tools out there are for free. So you may be wondering how do software companies make a buck? There are many different business schemes for that, such as training. There's cloud hosting, things like that. But we're going to talk about that later in these chapters on IT. More conclusions to come. Non-automation is always costly in terms of money, product quality, risk of non-delivery, not to mention life-work balance. But there are pitfalls to trying to automate too. There's lack of sponsorship and control, working with vendors who are understaffed. That slide where I talked about those challenges, trust me, that experience is going to be extremely valuable. I've been years in the business, and I saw a few projects just failing, and I saw many other projects succeeding. And what happened? Look at those pitfalls. Watch, watch those. Human touch is always necessary in all industries. We want to do what is human and let the machines do machine-like work. So that's a plus for automation. People sometimes are scared about automation, or are saying, are we not going to have any jobs or things like that? Actually, you're going to increase your quality of life. Your life-work balance is going to get better, and you're going to be able to do more and more work and even better programming. Trust me on that. And it's not too crazy to learn how to program. We're just going to get started on our next chapter. In the next chapter, Programming 101 will automate by programming a spreadsheet software, creating special formulas, computation and manipulation of data, aggregations, formatting, and leveraging patterns in text files. So see you next time.